On today's episode of the Mark Titus Show, a scary situation in Los Angeles on Tuesday. Bronny James suffering cardiac arrest in practice. One of those deals that I saw the headline and I was like, that's insane. But this is something that happens in young athletes. But at the same time, all the excitement around USC basketball this year, it's heartbreaking. That's the only way to describe it. I don't want to speculate on whether he's going to ever play again, not play again. I have no idea, but just a terrible, terrible situation in Los Angeles with Bronny James. We got Billy Football on the show to talk about what might have been the cause of this, what he thinks could have been. I'm kidding, of course. Obviously, that is not happening. But I wanted to mention at the cold open just that the Bronny James story is it's sad. It's sad, and if you listen to the show regularly, you know that I'm not good at this stuff because I just say it's sad over and over. And I hope it works out for him. And it seems like his health is going to be okay in the sense that it's no longer a life-threatening situation. They seem to have that under control. But what this means for his basketball career, what this means for the idea. Listen, as much as you might hate LeBron James, you can't deny that the idea of him playing with his son in the NBA would have been, and it still might be, and fingers crossed, we hope it'll work out, but that would have been a very, very cool thing. So it sucks, and I'll kind of wait to see what the fallout of it all is before I really put a bow on all that. But anyway, moving on, another scary situation is unfolding in Boston as the Celtics have given Jaylen Brown the biggest contract in NBA history, 5 years, $304 million. If my math is correct, that comes out to about $61 million a year, which is like 10 times my salary. That's crazy. That's a lot of money, TJ. I'll say it. I get that I am kind of a Celtics hater, and people are going to say you're just being a Celtics hater again, Titus, but I'm just being honest for how I feel. I feel like it's an overpay, TJ. I do. I feel like he's not worth more than I would give him 296. I think 296 million felt right. 304, that's a stretch. I think that's too much money. I think you're pissing $8 million away. And that was a problem. Enough about that. The real scary situation I want to talk about is what is unfolding in the state of Indiana with the high school basketball. Kind of a niche show today. My father is coming on. I have been so focused on the war against college basketball that I have lost sight of the war against Indiana high school basketball, which is something that is near and dear to my heart. And this offseason has been a catastrophic offseason, a catastrophic summer for the concept of Hoosier hysteria, of Indiana high school basketball mattering more. And the idea of 49 states, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana. All that kind of thing that means a lot to me. And it means a lot to me because of my father. But I thought I'd have him on the show because we'll talk about what's going on. But it has been a rough offseason for the mythos of Indiana basketball, the state, not the university. So Dad came on and we had some fun, reminiscing. A lot of, I think he set an all-time podcast record, TJ, for the most utterances of the phrase back in my day. I think he's been on the show a few times. I think he said back in my day more on this appearance than the rest of them combined. I think it was an all-time performance from my father. But I love having him on the show, and I transparently understand that it might not be everyone's cup of tea to hear about Indiana high school basketball talk in July, but it's something I care about and my dad cares about. So we had some fun talking about it, and hopefully you'll enjoy listening to it. Also brought Jordan Henry on the show. A man who has described himself as the John Rothstein of Canada. And the reason we have him on is because one of the big news stories this week in college basketball is that Dave Smart, who coached at the University of Carleton, or maybe it's Carleton University, apologies for not knowing which one it is, he was the head coach at Carleton in Canada, won 17 national titles over the span of 20 years, was just hired by Texas Tech to be an assistant coach. Kind of a wild hire in that regard. One of the most, I have to imagine it's one of the more accomplished assistant coach hires in sports history. A guy's won 17 Canadian national titles. So Jordan Henry's a guy that I've known for a while. He's come on some previous iterations of my shows to talk about the happenings of Canadian basketball. And I thought, what the hell? Dave Smart, the John Wooden of Canada, and calling him the John Wooden of Canada, I honestly don't know who should be more offended, the Wooden family or the Smart family, because this man won 17 freaking national titles. The fact that he's now coming to Division I big-time college basketball, albeit as an assistant, but he's going to be in the Big 12. That is very exciting. So I had Jordan come on the show, and we talked a little bit about that hire. So fun show coming up. Of course, none of this matters because UFOs are real, and we have aliens in our possession. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about some stuff that doesn't matter quite as much as the UFOs, TJ. Let's get into it. All right, those of you who have been following me for a while know that one of my obsessions in life is Indiana high school basketball. And if you think that is weird, you have not me to blame, but this man who instilled the obsession in me. It is my father, Coach Titus, making another appearance on the show. And the reason I'm bringing Dad on, first of all, it's late July and there's not a ton going on, but there is this going on in the world of Indiana high school basketball. So on March 25th, the state finals are played in Indianapolis, and a team called Ben Davis, which is a massive school on the west side of Indianapolis, actually their school butts up against my hometown. They play a team from Kokomo, a little north of Indianapolis, as a 5-star Flory Badunga, who we'll talk about in a second. They play in the state championship game. Ben Davis wins to clinch an undefeated 33-0 season. Was a big deal. 15,000 people are there. It was a triumphant moment for Indiana high school basketball, for Hoosier hysteria, Dad. Since then, I'll just tell the story of 4 5-stars. There were this past Indiana high school basketball season. There were 4 5-star recruits that were playing Indiana high school basketball. One of them is Xavier Booker, who's about to go to Michigan State. He's going to be a freshman at Michigan State this year. On June 6th, he decides he's opting out of the Indiana high school basketball, or the Indiana All-Star game against Kentucky. He's the best player on the team. He didn't win Mr. Basketball, but he said, I don't want to play. I'm out. I'm out of the Indiana All-Star game. Then on July 13th, Cannon Catchings of Brownsburg, my alma mater, who is a 5-star recruit, who I was hoping would lead the Dogs to a state title this year, would win Mr. Basketball. He announces that he is going to be playing his basketball for Overtime Elite in Georgia. So he's out. We say goodbye to him. Jalen Harrelson is a kid that plays at Fishers on the north side of Indianapolis. He is a 5-star recruit. I think he was going into his junior year this year. He announces on July 19th that he will no longer be playing for Fishers, his hometown team. He will now be playing for La Lumiere, the prep school up in LaPorte, Indiana. And then finally, Flory Badunga, the aforementioned 5-star kid from Kokomo that lost the state championship this year. On that same day that Jalen Harrelson says he's going to play for La Lumiere, Flory announces his top 4 college choices, and they are Kansas, Duke, Auburn, and Michigan. He couldn't even throw in just throw in one Indiana
IU,
school.
Purdue, Notre Dame, somebody.
Throw in throw in an IPFW or Purdue Fort Wayne. I guess they're no longer you got to throw in one in-state school just to kind of keep people in the state, a little excited about this. So those are the stories of the 4 5-stars in Indiana high school basketball. But then worst of all, Dad, the absolutely sickening. I saw them tweet a video of this on Tuesday. Spies Fieldhouse, which is in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It is a venue that if you could dribble a basketball and chew gum at the same time, and you graduated after the year 2005, and you're from the Midwest, you played God knows how many basketball games at Spies Fieldhouse. Everybody's played in Spies Fieldhouse. It is the preeminent summer basketball place in the Midwest. Absolutely legendary. It was our AAU team's home base. Spies Fieldhouse had 1 million courts. They announced not too long ago, and then I saw the video yesterday, and I vomited all over myself. They are tearing up the basketball courts to install pickleball courts. Dad, what is going on with Indiana? What is happening? This is an emergency. This is an emergency podcast. We have to solve this, Dad.
Well, the biggest issue is the basketball facility becoming a pickleball facility. That bothers me more than any of the rest of it. But a lot of great memories up there. It was a great facility. A lot of players came through. To the 4 guys, one thing it says about Indiana, Mark, is we're developing some pretty good players as they approach the high school years, so that part's good. As far as Cannon Catchings going down there, it's a family decision. If that's, I guess the minimum they get paid is $100,000 to play in that league. And I don't know the family situation.
Dad, why did Cannon not reach out to me? I would have paid him $100,000 to stay in Brownsburg.
I know.
I would have paid him $100,000 to lead the Dogs to the state championship.
I know.
Out of my own pocket.
And that's the hard part because he grew up with those kids, his teammates, and he's leaving. He'll never be able to have that relationship. I mean, that solid. He'll have relationships, but at the same time, when you get a chance to play for your community and wear Brownsburg on your chest, that's such a fleeting thing and such a neat thing. But if the kid grows up playing AAU, and here's the thing, Mark, even at a school like Brownsburg, you don't have 12 kids with an absolute passion for basketball. And if Cannon has that, at least he's going to a place where the kids and the people down there have a passion for basketball. They'll get some education, they say. But I don't know how much schooling goes on. I don't know enough about.
At overtime? Yeah.
Overtime elite, yeah.
What are the science classes looking like at overtime elite?
Yeah. But anyway, to be able to do that, and the same thing with Harrelson, going to La Lumiere and playing all over the country, and it's a little bitty school. I don't even think they have 200 students, but the way that school, it's obviously he'll stay on campus and be able to travel and play. And if that's what the kids know. Now, the tough part is not just, the state tournament or the All-Stars next year. Those two kids played in the same conference you played in, obviously Brownsburg, but, Fisher's, obviously, that is in our conference too. And our conference was going to just lock it down this year. And those two guys being gone, it'd be a little different story.
Wasn't you were telling me yesterday that the Hall of Fame game that they do, it's a big deal in Indiana. They play was it around Christmas or Thanksgiving?
Between Christmas and New Year's, December 29th and 30th. The girls are 29th and the boys play 30th.
The Hall of Fame Classic that they play at Newcastle, which is the biggest high school gym in the world, holds 9,000 people. They do like a doublehead. I don't know if it still is. I mean, I guess I could ask you that, but it was always a big deal when I was growing up, and even when I was playing in high school. Like my team was never good enough to play in it, but like I would. When we weren't playing, I would drive over to watch it because it was like two of the best teams in the state and all that. And Brownsburg and Fishers were supposed to play in it this year, but Harrelson and Catching, like they had signed up to play because it was going to be those two guys, and then now those two guys aren't there. I don't. Is this a crisis or are these like one-off things? That's what I'm trying to make sense of. Like,
well,
now that I'm back in the Midwest, Dad, like part of what I was excited about is when winter rolls around, I will be driving back to Indiana to watch some high school games. And I'm just trying to get a sense of where we're at with Hoosier Hysteria because...
Well, it'll certainly impact ticket sales, there's no question, unless I've heard in the past they've had alternates, a couple alternate teams. If for some reason the teams that were selected to play can't make it, or I don't know, maybe these circumstances, maybe they'll change their mind. But I had somebody recommend to, at least bring up the idea of waiting until August to decide to see what these kids are going to do, decide who plays in that, because it's just an additional 2 games. The state association doesn't count it towards the 22 they get to play.
So we'll find some reasons for optimism and hope in a second, but for now, like what would you say? Because you're a guy that I'll brag for you because you're a humble guy and you won't bring this up, but I had to hear these stories. You won't bring this up in public. You'll bring them up in private to me a million times when I was growing up. That you played in the North Central Conference with. Basically, the conference you played in when you were growing up in the 70s was all the biggest gyms. It was Newcastle, it was Marion, Muncie Central, on and on and on. The list goes on. If you're someone who's listening to the show right now and you have no familiarity with Indiana high school basketball, just Google like the biggest gyms, and like eight of the top whatever are probably from your conference in the 70s. And they were probably like they built the gyms. You played in the heyday of Hoosier Hysteria, is what I'm saying, Dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now, as you look back on that time when you were playing and what high school basketball is in Indiana now, which, we will find the reasons to be optimistic and to still feel like there's some juice there. But what is the number one thing that you're like, damn, that sucks that went away, or damn, that sucks that it's not like it used to be? What is your old man like? Or what are your top 7? What are your top 100 things?
Yeah, exactly.
Can you narrow it down to 100?
The strangest thing has been the crowds. When I played, all those gyms were standing room only. But there were no girls' sports. Girls' sports were just starting. Title IX was just starting to take effect. And all those gyms were just jam-packed, and it was a blast playing against the 4 Mr. Basketballs were on our schedule. I didn't play all 4. I only played my junior and senior year varsity, but all 4 years came from our conference or off our schedule. Kyle Macy in '75 was on our schedule because they're so close to Logansport. But those gyms were all packed, every single one of them. 7 out of the 8 teams every year to be ranked in the top 20, and many times number 1. A lot of all-stars, Mr. Basketball. I mean, it just was a great, great time, and that's the biggest thing is the lack of crowd. But it was such a blast playing back then. Everybody, it was the thing to do, and it all changed for a number of reasons, but it's sure different now in basketball.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what if I talk about Indiana high school basketball to people outside the state, that's what I've kind of, it really is truly, I don't know, it sounds like you're romanticizing it too much and, people roll their eyes or whatever, but it is less about like the basketball per se, and it is like the community thing. And like for better or worse, the state of Indiana, and I did this today, I checked this today, Dad. I went to the Wikipedia page. If you look up list of notable people from Indiana, the list of basketball players and basketball, like you get to like art section and you just kind of like scroll and you're like, all right, yeah, there's a little bit. You get to like music, it's like, yeah, okay. You get to the basketball, it's just like,
yeah,
just on and on and on. And for better or worse, like some places, would hope that their home state is more known for like, we have the smartest people in the country, or we have, for better or worse, this is what Indiana does is we basketball is, you cannot tell, and I mean this literally, that you cannot tell the story of the state of Indiana without mentioning basketball. It shaped the communities of all the small towns and the big cities, everything in between. If you are to write a history book about Indiana, you have to mention the basketball because it drove, like this is something a lot of people don't realize, is that the reason Indiana basketball gyms are so big, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dad, but I'm just regurgitating the stuff you've told me for 36 years. The reason that Indiana high school gyms are so big is because winning the Indiana State tournament was such a big deal to every community. Like that was the pride of the local communities. Was like, I'm talking like in the 40s, whatever, however far back you want to rewind the clock here. The greatest pride of a local small town in Indiana was to win an Indiana basketball state championship. And the teams that got to host the sectional, which was the earlier rounds, the first couple games, they basically just did it by whoever had the biggest gym got to host the sectional for, you got to be the host of the first couple rounds of the tournament. So every school cared so much about winning this thing that when the time came to build a new gym, or like, our gym's falling apart, whatever, we got to build our gym bigger than the guys down the road so we can host the first 3 games of the state tournament and put us at an advantage to win the state championship. And through that, the other thing that I noticed that's different, and I learned this when I moved to Columbus, Ohio. In Columbus, and really the whole state of Ohio, but it really felt in Columbus. There are a lot of the high schools get split up a lot easier, and there's a lot more. Like Dublin is a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, and they got Dublin, Kaufman, and there's 3 high schools. There's 3 high schools in one town. In Indiana, by and large, unless you're a bigger city. And there are a handful of exceptions, but by and large, there was one high school for every single town, and it's the exact same thing I'm saying here, because when the time came, when the towns would get together and they're like, "Listen, this high school is massive. Like we gotta break this high school up." There would always be a handful of voices that are like, "Whoa!
Yeah.
We're not splitting up the basketball team. We want to keep it." So the high schools explode, and like through that, there just becomes like this community of, there's a town called Brownsburg. I played high school basketball at Brownsburg High School. There's a town called Avon. People played high school and that was just kind of like how the system was. And that's why I say, if you were to tell the story of the state of Indiana, basketball like drove all of these decisions with like even where your tax money went and all that sort of thing.
Oh, sure.
And so like for that to be gone, it is on the one hand, it is like this is part of life and things change, but it is kind of sad that what you're saying, like the sense of community is
it wasn't just the biggest gyms, Mark. We had the coolest names. My high school gym was called the Berry Bowl, Logansport Berries. So we played in the Berry Bowl. Anderson Indians, they played in the Wigwam. But they were, Anderson held like 8,000. Our gym was the smallest in our conference, held 6,000 people. That's the smallest crowd I played in front of. Back then, Mark, the neighboring school districts that were in our sectional tournament would buy season tickets at Logansport to be able to get into a lottery to get more tickets for their little school to be able to come to the games. Brownsburg back in the day, before we built the new gym back in 2000, new gym, it's 23 years old.
And but correct me if I'm wrong. I'll stop you. You were the athletic director when we built the gym at Brownsburg. Did you or did you not look at what Avon did down the road?
Oh, absolutely.
We got to make it a little bigger.
Absolutely. Well, not only bigger, but better. I talked to them about what they didn't like, and what they wish they'd have done, and all that. So the quality of our gym was better than 3 other conference schools who had just built. But Brownsburg, I don't know if you remember, Mark, they would sell tickets to the first game on a Tuesday night, and people would be waiting because it was sold out for that game in an auxiliary gym. As people left, they would let more people in. So if it held 3,500 people, there could be 5,000 or 6,000 people there that night.
Wow.
Because one ticket would have served both games, but people would come and go. It was, and back in my day, in my hometown of Logansport, we had 10 elementaries. They all had their own little nicknames. I was a Jefferson Wildcat. So back then, you talk about what I miss. Everybody in Brownsburg is born a Bulldog. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
You don't like that.
I don't like that. Because I grew up as a Jefferson Wildcat, became a Fairview Junior High Trojan. If you wanted to be a Logansport Berry, you had to practice. You had to earn it. That's right. Yeah. so now that being able to be a Brownsburg Bulldog is the first participation trophy you get, and you get in at birth. So anyway, that's the way. That was a neat community thing, And you had a blast because you did. The ultimate goal was to be a Logansport Berry, play in that gym, play in the sectional at our school, and there are a lot of schools. It was a great advantage to host even the next step at the regional. And then you got to play in the bigger gyms at the Fort Wayne Coliseum or at Purdue or down at IU or in the semi-states back in the day. But neat track.
Talk to me about the Indiana-Kentucky All-Star game, which neither one of us played in. But someone near and dear to us did.
We were both up for it, though. We were both up for Mr. Basketball.
I was eligible. Yeah, we were both up for it.
We were eligible for Mr. Basketball our senior years.
Yeah, damn politics.
Tag on Greg. That was a fix was in for Greg.
That is a great point. I do feel like they were going to give Greg Mr. Basketball no matter what, and I feel like they kind of threw my application in the trash without even looking at it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I hold Kyle Macy to 47 points in the Berry Bowl, and they give him Mr. Basketball. People laugh. I tell them this. People laugh just like you did. I said if I wasn't gardening, he would have scored 80. So
and you've told me this a million times, and you're serious every single time that you really do feel like you shut him down.
Shut him down. Yeah, 47. But 47. It's just so different than it was back then, Mark, and the way that people look at it now, the Indiana-Kentucky All-Star Series is kind of died out. They played it at Southport High School a couple of years ago, and they move it around Kentucky. I mean, I think they get 1,000 people maybe.
Kentucky is bad.
They get their butts kicked every year. From that.
Well, this is I skipped over this. I should have mentioned this in setting the stage here. Why we're in a time of crisis, Dad. We lost this year. Indiana lost because Xavier Booker didn't play.
Right.
They lost at Kentucky this year, which never happens. But the Kentucky fan base, if you want to call it that, I'm talking about the high school, not the this isn't UK Wildcats. They've gotten they get less than 1,000 people at some of these games, these All-Star games, which used to be like the big deal in the back in the day. So,
remember Josh McRoberts didn't play either. He opted out of that series.
That's a good point. So this has been going on.
And you talk about kids, Mark, leaving back to that original stuff. Dave Colescott was a 1976 Mr. Basketball. He went to North Carolina. Kyle Macy was a 1975 Mr. Basketball. He went to Purdue for 1 year, and then he wisely gets this isn't the place for me. And he went somewhere worse, I think, to Kentucky.
I was going to say, did he
but he won a national championship. So that stuff's been an issue and been going on to some degree for a long, long, long time. But it's sure
that makes
different.
Me feel better then. That's positive that this is not new. These are not new phenomenons to see the. I guess for me the biggest it's. All right, so there's a couple things. Number one, because this is the first time I've kind of had the old man moment. I've known that the attendance isn't what it used to be, and even when I was playing, it was, like you would show me pictures and videos, and like, you go to these like we played in Anderson at the Wigwam. I personally, like my team,
right.
Brownsburg, when we played at Anderson, they didn't get a good crowd, and like, but I respected the Wigwam. Like I was there, like, this is so cool. This is the second biggest high school gym in the world. And like, I could feel the history, but it wasn't like a massive crowd. So like I've come to grips, Dad, with the fact that like you can't go back. It's things change. There's more entertainment options. This is something that goes on, and everybody's dealing with it in every sector of the world, basically. But my first old man moment, I think, came for two reasons. One is that the war on Indiana high school basketball has come to the doorstep. It has come to Hendricks County, Indiana. It has come to Brownsburg. The fact that Cannon Catchings, who is the most talented, this is a high school that produced Gordon Hayward. And based on what everyone's telling me, the Cannon Catchings is more talented at this point, at this juncture of his life, than Gordon was at this point of his life. Right. So to have a guy like that setting up for a senior year, Brownsburg was so good last year. He's about to be a senior, and it just like it felt like this would be a fun. Like I'm moving back to Chicago, and I don't mean to say that I was going to go to every Brownsburg game, but like. In my head, the content ideas are just circling. I'm like, how cool would that be if Brownsburg won a state championship? And I make a big deal about it on the show. And like, so that one hurt, that he's transferring from Brownsburg. But then there's also the war that I'm trying to fight against Overtime Elite. And for him to go to Overtime Elite was like the 1-2 where I was like, what is happening right now? And then for all of it to sort of happen at the same time. And for Spieth, the pickleball courts, like that is...
Well,
it just kind of came one after another where I didn't have time to like really figure out what the hell's going on here. And I just like, I would call you and be like, Dad, what's going on? And you're like, yeah, and just kind of shake your head. And then that's why I thought we got to have you on the show and hash this.
Well, some of these kids, Mark, in high school, you played 20 games and practiced 70 times a season. In AAU, you probably play 70 games and you probably don't practice 20 times. So these kids, I think, are used to that mentality of playing all the time, all summer. I don't know about Overtime Elite or Lalamure, how many games they play, but the travel and the opportunity again to play. When you played AAU, the passion for basketball on that team was much greater than it was on Brownsburg's basketball team. And that's the way it is for a lot of high schools, especially small schools, that they have a few kids that like the game, none that really have a true passion for the game like it was back in the day. But anyway,
that can be hard. I will. Yeah, I'll back you up on that. That can be hard for, I guess, kids that you're playing in AAU, you're playing at these academies, and every single guy you're in a huddle with, like you all have the same shared vision of we want to get to the NBA. We want to. This is the most important thing in the world to us. And some of your local high school teams, there's a kid that's just like, I'm on this team just because the hottest chick in school said she digs basketball players, and that's the only reason I'm here. And that's literally, and I don't care about it.
You had a couple of players that left the basketball team, end up pitching in the major leagues. One of them still pitched.
Morons.
What the heck? That's
never
too bad.
Anything.
Matter of fact, Lance is pitching tonight.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, for the White Sox. Yeah, Sox, Cubs.
Sox. Yeah. So.
But reasons for hope, because I don't want to be the. You're already a lost cause, Dad. I think you're already the
well, you want to talk about the positives?
You're already the old man yelling at the cloud. I don't want to be there yet. I'm too young for that. So like, give me some optimism here. Like, what it is. Indiana high school basketball still matters more than every other state, right? Like I'm still allowed to like say
and
we're better than you,
players.
Right? Yeah, we produce better players, right?
But I think part of it, Mark, is the way of the world a little bit. Back in my day, we didn't have open gyms. We went to the park and played against older people all the time. Marion, Indiana got to 14 straight semi-states, so 14 straight Sweet 16s in Indiana. Their coach had no summer program. He said, get your tail to the park and play against older people, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
In open gyms, everybody's kind of got their pecking order, and they know where they belong. But you go to the park and you throw a behind-the-back pass, some 30-year-old guy liable to kick your behind because they got to wait for 4 or 5 more games to get back in. And that was a neat thing. But the optimism, sports talk, there's more talk about high school sports than there was back then, maybe, but that's about it. The 3-point line, don't let the shot clock come into high school basketball. The
shot clock at high school basketball. Like never mind Indiana. This all the states that don't have the shot clock. It feels like there's one story a year that comes out about a team that won like 6-4 or 4-2 or something because like both teams were holding the ball.
Guard somebody.
And then everyone jumps. Yeah, everyone like latches onto that and says we need a shot clock in high school. Like every high school should have a shot clock.
No.
Which is insane to me because it's kind of the same argument that like people were pointing out with college shot clock that we should make the shot clock in college lower. And the smart people were like, listen, it's hard enough to watch a Virginia game when people can't figure out how to like get an open shot on Tony Bennett's defense when they had 30 seconds. Why would we give them 6 fewer seconds to be able to? That's how I feel about the high school shot clock. It's like, yeah, every so often you're gonna get like a horrendous game where it's like this is a joke of you're making a mockery of the sport by holding the ball and playing four corners and all that sort of thing. But the alternative is you're giving like 15-year-old kids, like 30 seconds to run offense. Like that's going to be a disaster.
Well, that's even worse than delaying the whole game. You give them 30 seconds and then they chuck up some half-hearted shot, and it's I think it's much worse. Listen, the smartest thing I ever did as a coach, we had a team delay on us, and it was 6-4 at halftime. So in the locker room, I pulled this out of my backside. And at halftime, it was our ball coming out. I said, we're clearly going to play a delay game. Now, would you rather be on offense or defense? So we came out and delayed and just picked them apart and then won by like 4 or 6 points. But you know what? Then trap them. Figure out a way. You got to give teams that aren't very good a chance. I think. And the other thing about high school sports, Mark, who are you going to get to run a shot clock? You're not going to get some
That's
kid
true.
out
That's true too. Great point.
Because you got to watch the ball hitting the rim. You don't get to watch much of the game, and you better be on it and be quick because they're going to be more stopped in talking about issues. But that as a former athletic director, I see that as the biggest thing. Unless you got a couple of really well trained people.
I'm thinking about some of my teachers or some of the people around the community. The idea of like one of them being the shot clock operator and how many times they'd have to stop the game to like figure out what.
You don't want a basketball fan to do it. Who wants to watch the ball, see if it hits a rim every shot? What in the world?
No kidding. Yeah,
that can't be any fun. I wouldn't want to do it.
Is Jeff Teague coaching Pike?
He is.
That's exciting, right? Jeff Teague is Jeff Teague is this is good for Indiana high school basketball because Jeff Teague right now is going on like every podcast telling insane stories, and he's a media darling, but he's also about to be the head coach of what I would consider a blue blood Indiana high school basketball program. His alma mater. He's going back to Pike to resurrect that program, which will be fun. That's like, that's a. I'm trying to think of what the comparison would be. That's Mike Woodson to Indiana. That's Juwan Howard to Michigan. That's Patrick Ewing back to Georgetown.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that'll be fun. I know the state finals, they seem to, I wasn't there, but 15,000 people, that's still exciting. So there's still like the Hall of Fame game. Does that like what, I don't know.
The Hall of Fame's in a tough time of year, with Christmas and all that and being over at Newcastle in the eastern part of the state, that's a little bit of an issue. Travel, weather, can become, but the state tournament, especially, small schools, they get so excited. That's the one neat thing about class basketball. It gives those kids an opportunity to play.
Do you like class basketball?
I will say this. I love the single class tournament, but after being at a small school where the football coach can win the single, and they had class football long before class basketball, and the football coach could talk all winter about lifting weights and working out and this and that, we'll win the football state championship. But where I was at Tri-West High School, near Indianapolis, where Jeff Gordon went to high school, they weren't going to go beat Brownsburg in the first round of the tournament and then beat Avon and then beat Plainfield. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen. So from that standpoint, it's great for the kids. I talked to a former coach that was very much against class sports, went to a 2A school, won the state championship, and his view, it was great for the community. That's it. But that's all, and it's harder. And people don't think about this, Mark. It's harder for a school like Brownsburg to win a state championship in 4A because they don't get to play a 1 or 2A school in the first 2 or 3 round, or the first 2 or 3 games. Yeah. So it's much more challenging.
Yeah, don't I know it? We always had to play the teams from Indianapolis rather than the teams from out in the country, and I would much rather have played the teams. I think I have a plan to fix this, to get some juice back. First of all, I think the fact that you haven't seen Hoosiers is a problem, Dad. And
why is that a problem?
Because I think there are a lot of people listening to this right now that just fell out of their chair, and they're like, if there's one thing we know, like we would assume about Coach Titus, is that Hoosiers it's his favorite movie. And the fact that you haven't seen like the preeminent Indiana, not only Indiana high school basketball, it's like the Indiana sports movie. It is the sports movie. And yeah, you haven't. I mean, like I think we got to fix that. I think you have to see Hoosiers.
That's not going to happen.
Why?
Why? Because that whole thing was loosely based after Milan winning the state championship in 1954. Milan didn't come from anywhere. In 1953, they were in the Final Four. And I think there were like 700 or 800 high schools in Indiana. So that movie is fraudulent in my view. You talk about what do they call it? Creative liberties in Hollywood. Man, did they milk that? But for Milan has milked it. That whole town. There's a museum down there. All that. No,
so
I'm not watching. Not watching.
I remember when
I'd rather watch Blue Chips if I want to watch a basketball movie. It was filmed in Indiana.
When I was at Fox, Tate and I did this was the 2020 Final Four. It was the COVID year. The whole tournament was. Well, no, it wasn't 2020 Final Four. Damn, there was no 2020 Final Four. Damn, that hurts. It was the 2021 tournament when the entire tournament was in Indy, and then the championship was, the Final Four was in Lucas Oil. We were doing a tour of the state of Indiana where you were kind of our guide,
right.
And Louise, our producer, her big idea was let's get your dad to take us to the Hoosier gym and show us around the gym where they filmed Hoosiers. It's over in Knightstown, Indiana. It's still there. If anyone listening for whatever reason passing through Knightstown, swing by. It's cool. But she was like, have your dad show us around. Like, that would be a really cool idea. And I was like, well, here's the thing. Here's the thing you need to know about my dad. And this might surprise you.
The brakes.
And then you showed up, and like the whole time you're just like pointing out everything that was not accurate. And you're just like, this is not wrong.
I will say this. It's an unbelievable gym, unbelievable venue. If you've seen the movie and you're in central Indiana, you have to stop by and go there. Holds what, 640 people,
Yeah.
640 seats. Yeah. Well, one thing, speaking of seats, let me point this out real quick. Back at my high school, Mark, for the sectional, during the regular season, we had 24-inch seats. Okay. Mm-hmm. When the state tournament came around, we had 18-inch seats. And those were distinguished by being burnt into the numbers were burnt in on the top of the bleachers, and then numbers were painted on the front of the bleachers for the state tournament. So we had
two different.
The gym grew. The gym grew for the state tournament. Yeah, Butts didn't get any smaller or bigger, but the gym grew.
So here's my idea. So we got to get you to watch Hoosiers, but if you're not going to watch Hoosiers, I think the way Indiana high school basketball gets back and gets the juice back is we have to remake Hoosiers. And I think it's been almost 40 years since that movie came out. And at the time, Indiana basketball as a whole, like just the whole idea of Hoosier hysteria was at its zenith. This was Bob Knight at Indiana, and
right.
the Hoosiers themselves won the national title like the next year. Everything was great. It's been almost 40 years. Everything is not great. Everything is not great. And I think we need a new Hoosiers movie to bring everything back. And I think I'll write it. I see it. I think we open with like there's just like the opening credits are rolling, and like in the you wouldn't know this because you've never seen the movie, but in the original movie we're seeing the shots of the cornfield and all that. I think we roll the opening credits and we see like all these packed gyms from the 70s. We see the 1990 state finals. Damon Bailey's playing in front of 40,000 people. And it's just like all the heyday type footage. And it's just like as they're rolling the open credits. And then it's like a hard transition when the movie actually starts to modern day Indiana high school basketball. And it's like a massive gym that holds 5,000 people, and there's 240 in the stands. And there's a guy who comes in who's the new commissioner, and he's just been hired to like fix Indiana high school basketball. He's the IHSA commissioner. I've thought about this, Dad. I'm picturing like a slime ball type dude, but he's charismatic. And he comes into one of these gyms, and like that's the opening shot is he's looking around, and he's just like, we can get this back. And he's talking to like one of his associates, and he's like, I think we can get this back. And then as the Act 1 progresses, his big idea, I think his big idea is he allows the prep schools to participate in IHSAA. So like right now, La Lumiere, where Jalen Harrelson is transferred, they can't win a state championship, correct?
Correct, but they can play
Yeah.
Indiana high schools that are in the association, but they can't play in the state tournament. That's right.
So I think this new commissioner's big idea. I think his idea is we should allow those so we don't lose out on Jalen Harrison playing for a state championship. Let's allow La Lumiere back in. Meanwhile, there is like we'll use Jalen Harrelson as the example. He's there is a scene where like he leaves his hometown to go to the academy or the prep school, and now the prep school can play in the state tournament. And there's a little bit of buzz around this. Long story short, we get to the state championship, and it's Jalen Harrelson versus Fishers, and now he's playing his old school. And he's playing his hometown, Dad. This is the Hoosiers that I would write. So now we have the big bad prep school that has like 5 stars across the board, and we have the local farm boys that just all grew up together. And one of the guys who's the 5-star was from that town, and now he's playing all of his former teammates. And then, Dad, here's what we find out. The night before the state championship, we find out that the commissioner of the IHSAA, who all this time we thought was like trying to rejuvenate Indiana high school basketball, he's an Adam Silver plant. He is actually here. He was sent by the NBA to destroy Indiana high school basketball. He is trying to create like academies, like letting the prep schools into the state tournament. He doesn't just want to let them in. He wants to also push the regular schools out. The public schools are out.
Right.
So his vision is like he only wants like 3, 4, 5 stars playing basketball. He doesn't want the local boys playing basketball anymore.
Right.
He's like, I want, and we find this out the day before the state championship. And then of course the Fishers team goes on to win the state championship, and it's this big moment. We get a scene where the commissioner's got like his programmer, his hat, and he like grits his teeth and spikes his, he's like, ah, damn it, and he's like very obviously upset. I think the coach kisses the mom of one of the players. We're not really sure why, but they're just like all celebrating at the end. And then the coach becomes the new commissioner, and he gets rid of class basketball. And we go back to a single, and then Hoosier Hysteria is back. What do you think, Dad? Is that a movie that you think would work?
I might watch that one. Yeah, that's a little bit far-fetched. I might watch that, especially if a fight breaks out between the kid that left Fishers and Fishers.
Yeah, we need a fight.
Yeah,
we need a fight in there somewhere.
Yeah. No drunk dads coming out of the stands, though.
No drunk dads coming out of the stands, but there will be the Coach Titus rule where there's a guy who says back in my day, just a bunch.
Right. Oh,
just
yeah.
What if like your role is you're like on the new commissioner's board, like his advisory board, and you have the pure intention, and you kind of are too naive to like the fact that he's actually trying to backstab you, and the whole time you're just like, and you're the one that, I don't know. We'll workshop this, but I think there needs to be a new Hoosiers. I think that's the way we get Indiana high school back. So Indiana high school basketball back.
Well, it's funny you said that. I played in a golf tournament and just spent time talking to the current IHSA commissioner, and we talked about NIL in high school.
At the high school level?
Well, it is in a lot of states. North Carolina for sure. South Carolina doesn't have it yet, but we talked about that, and this was neat, Mark. When he talked about transfer students, because as you know, in a metropolitan area, kids have reasons to transfer supposedly, and on and on. And their biggest concern is, one, it's education-based athletics. But the other one is their concern, and he'll talk about it, is who is this kid just move in for 1 year? Who's he displacing off the team who's grown up in that community and deeply rooted?
Right.
Like you did in 6th grade. When we moved to Brownsburg. But no, that's a pretty neat. I think that's a pretty neat angle to look at it, to try to get the community feel and the deeply rooted communities back into it. But people come and go and move and here and there for jobs and stuff. But anyway, yeah, I like that story. I like it better than Hoosiers. You know what other Indiana movie I like better than Hoosiers? Breaking Away.
Yeah, that's an Indiana movie. Yeah. I thought you were gonna say Rudy. Have you seen Rudy?
It's Notre Dame. Who cares? Who cares? It's not basketball. It's Notre Dame.
I think the modern Hoosiers needs to have the enemy be the prep schools, and the local boys get it done. And I'll write the movie. We'll make it happen. Before we let you go, Dad, we got to play the hits. If people are tuning into a Coach Titus appearance on this program, they want to hear you talk about Purdue. We have not had you on the show since Zach Edey decided he's coming back to Purdue. Where are you at with all this?
I'm glad he's back. I think they've got way too much talent. I think they're going to have issues with playing time. I think they've got a couple guards that are going to want to shoot it more. I talked to one of their radio guys, Bobby Buckets Riddell, and talked to him about some of this. That's thus the IU attire today. But I think, Mark, I thought 2 years ago they'd run the table with Jaden Ivey, and Edey and Williams, those guys they had. And I think they're going to have too much talent. I think they're going to stand around just like they did last year. When he goes out of the game, they're going to look lost on offense. Woody owns them right now, so we're not worried about that. Woody's got their number. So and they still have the same coach. That school's still in West Lafayette. They still have those god awful colors.
Still says Purdue.
Still have
on the front of their jerseys.
Moronic nickname, and so they've got nothing going for them. They'll be ranked in the top. They'll be ranked, and then there'll be someone BS. That's not a worry. I'm not concerned about them.
I have disappointed you many times over the course of my life, but perhaps none of my disappointments will be worse than what I'm about to say, Dad. I've been wanting to say this.
We have a bad connection, Mark. That's starting to my computer battery's going.
We have. I've wanted to do this on the show for a while, but I didn't want you to hear it from anyone else. So I wanted to wait till you came on the show to say this. But I wanted to announce to my audience and you at the same time.
All
so
right,
here you are. I'm going to announce this. So backstory. Last year, I went to both Purdue, Indiana games, and you and I went to the game in Bloomington, and it was. I don't say this lightly. It was a top 3, top 5, whatever memory I have of our relationship. The two
I
of
agree.
us. Like it was an all-time.
Who won the game?
Indiana won the game. So
Purdue
was ranked number 1.
Hmm.
The Hoosiers win. Everyone storms the court. It was just one of those. It was a great father-son memory, and
Amen.
We drive back home and we share the story with Mom, who people that listen to the show know Mom's a Purdue gal and played at Purdue and all that. So Mom never really cares about the rivalry. She was genuinely did not care that Purdue lost, and she was like tearing up hearing how special this night was to the two of us, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to Mom, we're gonna run this back, and when Indiana plays in West Lafayette, I'm gonna go to the game with Mom, and we're gonna go to Mackey Arena, and I'm gonna have a great experience with my mother at her alma mater. Unfortunately for her, Jalen Hood-Schifino played the game of his life. Indiana also won that game, Dad.
They won. Oh my! I'd forgotten.
They did.
They won that one too. Oh darn! What's that? 2 in a row.
And as the clock is getting run out, and the scoreboard says zeros and the Hoosiers win, Mom's crying, and she's sad. She's literally crying. And I was like, Mom, I thought because like she really genuinely has not cared that much about the Purdue-Indiana rivalry, which is what makes it funny. And growing up in that house is what made it so funny, is that you care immensely, Mom does not care, and it's like it was always a funny dynamic. But suddenly Mom is crying because Purdue lost the game, and I said something to her. I was like, Mom, I can't believe you care. Like, I've never seen you care this much. And she goes, I don't care about the result. Like it was less about Purdue losing, Mark. And it was more about like, I wanted to have a memory with you, like you and your father had in Bloomington. And I was hoping that the two of us in West Lafayette I was hoping to go home and tell your father about the night we had together and how this was an all-time memory. And like kind of what you did when you guys went to Bloomington. And I say that to say, Dad, that for that Purdue team to lose that night, when you had already lost to Indiana and you were you're supposedly the better team, and you go on to win the Big Ten,
right? And
then to go on and lose to a 16 seed, Fairleigh Dickinson, who's starting a 6'2.5" center against Zach Edey. I'm saying this less as a guy who cares. This has nothing to do with Purdue. This has to do with my mother. You made my mother sad. I'm speaking to the Purdue Boilermakers now. Matt Painter, this is for you. You made my mom sad at a level that I have rarely ever seen her, and I'm disgusted to my core. So I have no choice, Dad, and this is the part where I'm going to disappoint you. I have no choice but to step in and use the exact same influence I used to will Virginia to the 2019 national championship after they lost to the 16 seed. I have no choice but to use all of the power I have to get Purdue to the Final Four this year. I'm going to do that. And I'm sorry to say that to you. I wanted you to hear that straight from my mouth, but I think what this Purdue team did to my mother last year is unforgivable. It's unacceptable. And the only thing that will make me like not have that image of her like crying.
The only thing that's unforgivable is you willing Purdue to the Final Four, son. Whose kid are you?
I don't want. I'm my mother's kid is who I am.
Half of your genes came from me. Maybe the
I know,
Elite
but,
Eight.
Dad, we're not going. I'm not sending them to the national. They're not winning the national championship. We're just getting them to the Final Four.
Mark, they don't know what the Final Four is up there.
I know, but I don't know. I'm just here to say Purdue will make the Final Four this year, and it'll be because of me. I don't like when the Purdue Day of Giving came along. I donated my $35 like I always do. I have not made this public until now, but I kicked in an extra 35 cents because I was like, we got to get this over. Yeah, this is you guys need all the help you can get. So I would like to officially declare on this show that I will be throwing my weight behind the Purdue Boilermakers, not because I'm cheering for them. I will not be betting on them, so this will not be. I stand to gain nothing from this in terms of money. I will not even be rooting for it to happen, Dad. So you can take solace in that.
You're running me back.
I'm just telling you that this is something that must be done because my mother, seeing her cry to that extent was just unacceptable, and I have to step in and do what the Purdue team can't. I'm going to do this for them. You know what I mean, Dad? Like they can't. You're right. They can't make the Final Four on their own. So I have to use whatever magic I use to get Virginia to a national championship. I have to do that for Purdue now.
You don't have to.
Sorry.
But my biggest concern is I can't wait to see the improvements at Mackey Arena with that kind of a financial donation that you dug so deeply to boost their program for them. So I hope that has an impact. Maybe a couple rolls of toilet paper in those fancy restrooms they've got. Who knows? But I hate to hear that to you, Mark, because I thought you knew a little more about basketball than that. To think Purdue's going to go to the Final Four.
Dad's going to the Apple reviews page and leaving 1-star reviews and
yeah, exactly. Who is this kid? Knows nothing about basketball.
All right, I think that's enough. Before we go, let's do this exercise. So there's a ongoing, I don't know if we'd call it a meme, but there's just a thing that people like to talk about on the internet that they'll say that guys will just sit around and name athletes. That's just like what guys you just literally name athletes. So I thought this was my life growing up with you with Indiana high school basketball. So like, are there any like, I guess it's kind of just like shout outs, but like, I just thought it'd be fun to just name some dudes, just name some Indiana high school basketball guys.
Indiana high school basketball guys.
Just name some names.
Names from my day?
Yeah.
Kip Benson played at IU. He was Mr. Basketball.
Yeah.
Kyle Macy, who I've stayed in touch with. Yeah. Who else? Logan Sport, Berries.
Did you play against Scott Skiles?
Scott Skiles, 1982 state champion.
He was younger than you, right? He was a lot younger than you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was coaching. Yeah. And, by then, but the guys that I remember are George McGinnis. Played at Indianapolis, Washington, Mr. Basketball. He also played in the football All-Star game.
Who's the deep cut? Who's the best guy you played against or ever saw play or whatever else that didn't maybe make it to the league or like people wouldn't?
Kyle Macy had a short stay in the league, but he was as good a player as I'd ever played
Kyle
against.
Macy's a good answer, I think, because Kyle Macy is not a – I think people know Kyle Macy, but not –
There's a national award named after him for guards.
There is. Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, I mean, his father coaching Kyle was an amazing player. And he was like Gordon, he was a great tennis player, Kyle was. Matter of fact, he's been coaching tennis down in Lexington for a number of years. But those guys back in that day, we had, like I said, Mark, in our conference, we had a lot of Mr. Basketballs, a lot of state champions. So there's so many great players that came through there, and it was so much fun. But my favorite list are the 5 people I give a rip about that went to Purdue. Your mother's one of them. There's only 5 people that went to Purdue that I halfway like.
Billy Keller won.
Billy Keller.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Robbie Hummel.
Robbie Hummel.
Bobby.
Bobby Riddell. Yeah. I don't know who else.
Well, you talk about great players, and I'd have to throw Rick Mount in there because he was the first high school athlete to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
There we go.
He played at Purdue from Lebanon, Indiana.
Yep. So, all right. That was nice.
We can't talk basketball without mentioning Pete Maravich, Mark. Not Indiana, but his point guard was from Indiana.
Oh, wow.
He was Rick Mount's high school point guard. Look that up.
Well, there we go. That's the deep cut right there. That's the guy. Is the guy who was Rick Mount and Pete Maravich's point guard.
Yes, sir.
That's
Press Maravich was a smart man. So
there we go. All right, that was fun, Dad. We'll figure out a way to be optimistic about all this.
To edit this,
it'll be fine. Yeah, no, I don't care. It's the off season. I don't care. This is what this show is. I want to have people I love on and talk about things we care about. And I'm very open about this. Like, this is I've said this a million times on the show. That's my career goal, is to do a YouTube show for 112 people that covers Indiana high school basketball. And I have an audience of 112, and I produce it from Santa Barbara, California. And
well,
and I tell everybody that I'm the one guy that's plugged into the Indiana high school basketball scene more than everyone else, even though I live in California.
Well, two things we didn't mention about Indiana high school basketball is the Friday and Saturday night radio show that covers the entire state, talking about high school basketball and scores and having coaches on. So that's a really neat thing about high school basketball in Indiana.
Bob Lovell's still doing it? Is Bob Lovell
as far as I know, Bob's still doing it. He was a former coach at IUPUI. And then the other thing, Mark, is the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame is unbelievable. For those that haven't been through here and seen it, it's just, I think it might be the only one or one of two in the United States, but it is so well done.
Yeah.
And so much, John Wooden memorabilia, and from back when he played and coached, obviously. But it's a great, great experience to stop there.
I would just love to be able to talk about Indiana basketball, basketball in the state of Indiana, and not have to bust out black and white footage and that's all I'm asking for. That's all I'm asking for.
You're not going to be able to do that with me. So
Flory's awesome for what it's worth. We like him. Flory Badunga from Kokomo, the big dude.
Yeah,
he's good. Yeah. He's good. He's staying at Kokomo. That's exciting. But he's just going. He's probably going to Auburn or something, right?
Well, and
Auburn, Michigan.
And to your point about the stars being around, they sell that gym out every night because of him.
Yeah.
And it holds 7,500.
There's still pockets. There's still you get a guy but that I think that's what's disappointing is I was hoping Cannon would bring that to Brownsburg this year and people get,
absolutely
foaming at the mouth about how good the dogs are, but that's all right.
And then there's some small town team pockets that are really, really enthused and sell out their gyms, little gyms. But Kokomo gets a great, great crowd because of him. So it's kind of a fun thing. I need to get up there and see him play.
All right, I'll go with you. We'll go together. We'll have a great time, and then we'll go home and tell Mom about it. All right. Thanks, Dad. We'll have you back on at some point when Purdue starts 15-0 and looks dominant, and we'll have
haven't played on the road yet.
No, they're playing in Maui. Come on, that's
not on the road.
If they win Maui, are you concerned?
No. They've got to beat someone on their court in front of their crowd for it to be able to be ranked number one.
When will you officially be concerned about the idea of Purdue winning a national championship this coming season? When will you literally no hyperbole? When will you actually be like, damn, this might be a real thing that I have to live in a world where Purdue wins a national championship? At what point?
Well, if they're a 1 seed and can beat a 16 seed, that'd be a good
start. They get to the second round.
Second round. Got to get there and move on. So,
all right.
Great talking with you. Take care. Love you, buddy. Talk to you soon.
All right. Joining me now is a man who refers to himself. I don't know if he still does. He used to. This is how I met him. He referred to himself as the Canadian John Rothstein. He's the guy who's plugged in on all of the happenings of Canadian college basketball. Yes, there is Canadian college basketball. And the reason I'm having him on this show is because the story of American college basketball, if it is not Bronny James' cardiac arrest situation, it is that Dave Smart has been hired to Grant McCaslin's Texas Tech staff, which is a hire that, frankly, is probably the best assistant coach hire, if not in this offseason, maybe ever in college basketball. It's absolutely absurd, and yet I would say that American college basketball fans have no idea why this is such an absurd hire. So I had to turn to the Canadian John Rothstein, Jordan Henry, to explain to the people. Jordan, I guess start with that. Why explain to everybody who Dave Smart is, why this is such a big deal, and what's going on here. Why this is news.
I mean, first off, I think you're bang on. It's easily a home run for best hire of, this coaching cycle of hires, but I think it's the greatest coaching hire, not just in collegiate basketball history, but I think in sporting history. If you just want to look at Dave Smart's track record and resume, his ability to win and breed winners. I mean, the stat I'll throw at you right away, he's won 17 of the 20 last national championships north of the border. I mean, that's an absurd statistic. And it's not he's won quite a few. I guess our conference is more, regionalized within states instead of spreading state borders, kind of like the American markets do. But, the Ontario, I guess, provincial, but it's really our conference. I wouldn't he's less successful in those than he is in national championships. He knows how to win on the biggest stage. He knows how to recruit. He knows how to coach. He knows how to bring guys together. And he's the greatest coach easily in Canadian basketball history. And I'm just excited for the guy to finally get his opportunity to show himself on the big stage at Texas Tech.
So I guess the obvious question I have is why would he do this? If he's such a legend, he wins national titles in Canada. To my knowledge, my hasty research I did before we sat down here, it seems like he spent his entire life in Ontario. What's the play here? It's cool. It's great for college basketball. It's great for Texas Tech. If I was a Tech fan, I would be very excited. I'm just trying to understand what's the motivation, do we suppose, behind Dave Smart even wanting to take this job? Because he's an assistant coach now. You're the head coach. You've won 17 national titles as a head coach to then become a Texas Tech assistant when I don't know what the connection is with him in Texas. It's very confusing, but I love it for our sport.
He's kind of stepped back a little bit with Carleton. He still works for the university up until this past season. After 18-19 was his last year as the head coach of Carleton. And then a gentleman by the name of Taffy Charles took over the head coaching duties, and he kind of took a step back, and he was still involved in practices, and he was the most active director of basketball ops you've ever seen on a sideline at a basketball game.
So he's Coach
K. He's literally Coach K. Yeah,
Coach K is doing for Duke right now. Yeah,
but I honestly think it's probably a challenge that he was looking to try and challenge himself with. The last couple of years, he's kind of bounced around and done a few different things instead of continuously coaching this Carleton team. I mean, he got hired by the Ottawa Senators back in 2019. He helped them with some of their defensive mindsets and, just kind of team building and, championship. He was essentially an NHL life coach for a couple of years there, just telling the Ottawa Senators how to dig deep on defense. If there's a team who's going to defensively improve, Texas Tech is going to be another one too. I just took a quick glance at this
Barstool Sportsbook
before we hopped on here. 95-1 for a national championship this upcoming season. With Dave's track record, it's not the worst way to spend $5 that I can think of for sure.
Yeah. I guess do we think this is a stepping stone for him? Do you think he's going to try to become an American Division I head coach? I mean, is this
this is definitely not the first time he's had an opportunity to make a move like this. I mean, with his track record in Canada, we've seen coaches that were kind of at his level, some of the greatest coaches, especially in the Ontario Conference, man by the name of Roy Rana, who was the head coach at the university I attended. He made his jump. He made his move. He left Ryerson University. He jumped to the Sacramento Kings and was an assistant coach there for a couple of seasons. And now he's the head coach of Egypt's national team program there. So I wouldn't I would assume it's definitely a stepping stone, but I think he wanted to get himself somewhere like Texas Tech to get him into a conference that's going to get him some bigger games and get himself a little bit more on the stage. Because I mean, you're having me on to kind of explain who this guy is when if his resume was as well known as it should be, he wouldn't have to take an assistant coaching job to kind of get his name well known in circles.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that that live and breathe basketball kind of knew the magnitude of this, but I think it's fair to say that there aren't a lot of American college basketball fans that are paying attention to what's going on north of the border. So you have to forgive us for not. I knew because you used to come on all my old shows and we'd talk about how good Carleton was and all that. But I think you have to forgive the American fan for not understanding how dominant this guy has been. But I guess I'm thinking about what the listeners right now are probably thinking, which is like, this is great. The man won 17. What'd you say? 17 out of 19.
17 out of 20 national
17 out of 20 national championships. Is this a situation where he almost won too much to where it's no longer impressive, because by winning so many national championships, you're saying less about how good you are as a coach, and you're now saying it more speaks to how bad Canadian college basketball is. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like what is the competition? Yeah, do you see this as him being more dominant, that Canadian basketball, there's only like 4 or 5 good teams and he happens to be one of them, and they, because like I'm thinking like the comparison I would probably make is like Gino Auriemma at UConn. Some of those national titles he was ripping off there for a while. It was like, there's 7 women coming out of high school that can play basketball and 6 of them are committed to UConn. Like, I mean, on the one hand, yeah, congrats Gino, but also like this is, the scale's a little tilted in your favor. Is that what was going on in Canada, or is it just like he's built a dynasty through in a competitive market?
It's definitely more of a dynasty builder for him. I mean, the names he was recruiting, the players he was bringing in were kind of coming in as guys that, weren't your class A recruits, or, we often get guys that'll head south of the border and they'll play a year at, D2, low D1, a mid-major, and, play 6 minutes a night and kind of realize they want to go back up. And, we waive a transfer if you want to come back from the US to Canada. You don't have to sit out a year if you're transferring from an American institution back into a Canadian one. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't the guy that was loading up on those players. And he was kind of developing, like there'd be a guy sitting on the end of the bench and they'd win a national championship and he'd be playing 6 minutes a night and you'd have no idea who he was. And then he was a second team All-Canadian the next year because he finally got a year into the system. He's a player developer. He's got a really good eye for bringing guys in, but like they're a big we not me team, even though that, they've got the most national players of the year since he started coaching the program. But that's less on recruiting the best players and just having the best talent, and more being the best coach and the best culture.
So what is it? What is it? What are like the hallmarks of Carleton program? Like what is it that he's bringing to Texas Tech?
It's 100% the defense. Like if you when he
Tech
like
fans
he
are
runs,
gonna love that. They're gonna love that. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's, if you're not fully engaged on defense, he'll take his best offensive players out. Like they're, everyone's engaged on both ends of the floor. Guys are, flying up and down, not afraid to go down low and, use the big man, a little bit of a traditional aspect, but like he'll stretch the 3 with some longer guys too. He'll get his big men involved both beyond the arc and down low. But at the same time too, like he's not adverse to, putting the big guy on the block and letting him go to work. So I wouldn't say so much that there's a huge offensive twist that he's going to be looking to put on a team as an assistant coach. But what I expected as soon as I saw the news yesterday was he's really going to be putting a touch on this Texas Tech team with his defensive abilities.
Which is what Texas Tech basketball is to everybody, is like they just play insane defense and tough-nosed defense. So that's exciting that the brand's still going to be there for Texas Tech. So what does this mean for Carleton? Is the Carleton dynasty done now? They're the one, I mean, are my Calgary Dinos in a position to pick up the baton that's being dropped by Carleton here? Because I'm a diehard Calgary Dinos fan, as you know, Jordan.
Those Calgary Dinos do have one national championship in the last 20 years, which is only 4 teams can say that. Yeah. So
we remember that was a big day in my house. Yeah.
Yeah. You're still scraping champagne off the walls after that championship of the Titus household. I wouldn't say like I think he stepped aside as a coach because I think he knew Taffy Charles, who has head coached the team the last 4 seasons, all national championships with Carleton. He's been a guy that I think they knew he was the head coach of the women's team when Dave was the head coach of the men's program, and I think they knew that we're going to lose this guy.
They hired the women's coach to be the men's. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I think it was more Dave stepping into that director of basketball ops position because he knew, Taffy was younger and, he kind of wanted to give him an opportunity to be successful at the university that, I mean, Taffy's ready to run. I mean, he's won 4 straight national championships himself, and he was the head coach of all of those teams. And I think, what makes me believe that the dynasty is not over and will never be over, and I'll be 85 years old one day, and the number I'll look at you and say is, it's 98 of the last 110 national championships. Is, their ability to falter, like I mentioned in the conference playoffs, and in the Ontario Conference, it's only the 2 finalists that get an automatic bid into our national championship tournament, which is only 8 teams. But I mean, 2 years ago, they lost in a semifinal matchup, went into the national championship as a 7 seed, and ran the board and won a national championship that way.
So they're winning as like the number 1 seed, where they're dominant and they're the best team all year. But then they also win national titles when it feels like it's not their year, and they still find a way
they haven't won the provincial conference championship in a few years, but have won national championships in all of those seasons. Like it's almost like, and it's so weird. Like the seeding, there's 6 teams, like the top 6 of the 8. If you're a conference champion, you can't be lower than 6. So sometimes you get like the Quebec champion, which is the best out of 5 or 6 teams, will then end up always being the 6th seed. So if you're really thinking national championships matter more than conference championships, the 3 seed is really the spot you want to be. And I don't know if that was always a conspiracy theory. I don't know if he ever was like, well, we should be 3 because we'll be set up to avoid the 1 seed and then beat them. And there's a lot of like Ontario conference rematches in the national championship, but that's
interesting.
That's going to happen just based on population size in the province.
Before I let you go, we got to talk about Canadian basketball as a whole. FIBA World Cup's coming up in August. I think it's late August. Canada. I looked this up. This blows my mind because there's so many Canadian basketball players in the NBA now. Steve Nash is obviously the legend of Canadian basketball and was so good in the NBA for so long that basically the Canadian men's national team has had 0 success to speak of on the world scale when it comes to like the Olympics. I think I looked it up before we sat down that they 1936 silver medal in the Olympics. But the FIBA World Cup, Canada doesn't really do that well. The Olympics, you don't really do that well. And yet there's so many great young players in the NBA that are coming up that like I felt like basically since Andrew Wiggins went number 1, that there's been an excitement around Canadian basketball for a while. And now some of these younger guys are in their primes. They're, it feels, as an outsider, it feels like this might be a good opportunity. This might be a good time for Canada to finally like step up and I'm not saying you should expect to win the World Cup, but what is the expectation for you as a Canadian going into like a World Cup situation or Olympic situation? Where do you think Canada stacks up right now?
I mean, I think the expectation's been for a couple of years now that this country should be playing in the Olympics. I think that's, as much as you'd like to say that, a FIBA World Cup would matter to this country, I think, success at the FIBA World Cup to people in this country just means that we're back in the Olympics. I mean, Canada hasn't qualified for an Olympic basketball tournament since Sydney in 2000, and that was a Steve Nash team. But I think you look at, the World Cup roster this year and, you've got, I think a lot of the time, like when the World Cup would come up, you'd have guys that were in the midst of negotiating a contract or coming off an injury. I think that now that you've got, obviously a very strong backcourt and, the jump that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander made last year and, Jamal Murray's turned into an NBA All-Star, but they've got a really good mix of them and then the guys that have put in the work, like Thomas and Phil Scrubb, 2 former Carleton Ravens that are, going to be on that World Cup roster. They're going to be able to get some minutes on this team that know the FIBA rules so well. And, you got a guy like Dylan Brooks and Luguentz Dort and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and then RJ Barrett. And it kind of feels like it's now or never. I don't know if it's the right way to look at it, but this is kind of like the beginning of, I mean, you look at players drafted from outside the US year over year when it comes to the NBA draft. And the last couple of years, Canada's been right there as 2nd place team behind the United States. So that's Canadian basketball feels like United States soccer a little bit. Like this is like a golden generation that's coming, but we're actually not really sure how good this golden generation even is. But we're all talking ourselves into like this is the first time. You keep getting told that they're a great team, but like you look at the results year over year, and you're like, God, that's so USA soccer.
Yeah, but you look at the roster, and you're like, damn, there are a lot of NBA logos next to these guys' names, and we have some talent. Like, why can't we? No Wiggins though, no Mathurin. That's devastating.
Zach Edey, though.
Zach Edey is playing?
Yeah, I think he's on the roster.
So give me the with Jamal Murray having won the obviously the Nuggets win the NBA championship. He doesn't get the Jokic treatment. He doesn't get the foreigner treatment that Jokic gets. Where like we don't see shots of Jamal Murray in Canada living it up, and like we don't get reminded that, is there an anti-Canada bias from the American media, Jordan? Is that what it is? Like,
Are they
I feel like yeah.
Maybe they're just tired of, Canadian player goes in the top 10 and then like they're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
it's just another Canadian, because it feels like it's happening, year over year. Like we're getting, first round pick.
Yeah, but then we finally got one that I wouldn't say he led the team. Obviously, Jokic is the best player, but Jamal Murray being hurt the last two playoffs and the Nuggets weren't great in those playoffs. I don't think that's a coincidence that now he's healthy and they win the title. So can we get some shine for Jamal Murray? But give me the power rankings of what are the streets saying in Canada of like the guys who run shit in Canadian basketball right now? Like Zach Edey's National Player of the Year. Does that matter? Jamal Murray, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Wiggins. Like who's like the guy that runs shit in Canada? Would you say with basketball? Active players only, not Steve Nash. He's probably obviously the answer, but
no, like Steve Nash is probably on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of expectation that it was going to be RJ Barrett, and then it never ended up really being RJ Barrett. Shai gets a lot of love, and I think it's he grew up very close to Toronto, which is always going to help with the national sports networks all being based out of Toronto. But I mean, Edey was huge last year because U.S. college basketball, especially regular season conference games, don't make our sports center on a regular night. But if Edey has a 2020 game and Purdue wins, then next thing you know, that might make a 30-second highlight into our national media. So I think as people see more and more Canadians starting to do well, and obviously, Jamal's success last year like led off the highlight shows for, a week or so afterwards. It might still be, leading the sports block in Kitchener, Ontario, his hometown. So who knows there? But I mean, it's definitely, it feels like there's a lot of Canadian sports that were waiting for them to take the next step. I mean, the women's soccer team's right in the Women's World Cup right now. The men's soccer team's supposed to make a huge jump for the next World Cup that we're hosting. The basketball one is one that we've been recently let down by, but expectations are high heading into the World Cup.
Which is all you can ask for. You just want a little hope. That makes it fun going in.
Yeah.
And then, So, last thing, do you want to apologize to all of America for Dylan Brooks? Just sending us Dylan Brooks, like unleashing.
I mean, that 80 mil that he got though from Houston, that's gonna translate really well with the conversion rate to Canadian dollars. So
what happened? What between like Mathurin calling out LeBron as soon as he got drafted, and like Dylan Brooks is kind of an asshole, but he almost loves being an asshole too much to where it's just kind of I don't know what Dylan Brooks. We could talk about him forever, but what happened to like the nice Canadians? Like somewhere along the line, the nice Canadian, like Wiggins, that was like almost the biggest flaw of his was like he's a great basketball player, but he's kind of like when I watch him at Kansas, I'm like he's way too nice. He was even that way in the NBA. It was the stereotypical nice Canadians, and then now you got Dylan Brooks representing Canada, and I'm like, what the hell happened?
I think you answered it with your previous question, though, of talking about, what's wrong? Like, why is this anti-American bias against Canadians? Maybe the Canadians are just so tired of this anti-Canadian bias against them.
Yeah.
Like Jamal's not getting the Jokic treatment, and he goes, they get together as a group like the NFL running backs, and they said, we need to start going at LeBron. We need to get on the A block on Sports Center. We need to get interviews with Scott Van Pelt. We need to be a focal point, even if we're not a focal point on the court.
That would be awesome if there's like a story comes out that like for the last 7 years, Canadian basketball has been working together. All the Canadian players have been in lockstep trying to infiltrate the NBA and the media machine and all that kind of thing. Jordan, you're the best, man. Thanks for making time and shedding some light. I am excited for Dave Smart at Texas Tech. I know he's an assistant coach. A lot of people listening are probably like, he's an assistant. Calm down. How much is he going to actually impact this program? But I think he's going to be great, and I think like you said, like you win 17 national titles out of 20 years, and you get hired as an assistant. That has to be. I don't know if he's going to be the best. I don't know, but like he's got to be the most accomplished assistant coach.
It's got to be worth something.
College. Yeah, he's got to be the best, the most accomplished assistant coach hire maybe in sports history. He had 17 titles in 20 years, and now he's going to be an assistant.
If he had won 20 of 20, like would he have gotten a sniff at like a mid-major head coaching job, or would 18 have maybe got him like an associate head coaching, like co-assistant job, or
I'm fascinated. I can't wait to see what happens next because I don't think he's long for Lubbock unless McCaslin moves on or something. But otherwise, I have to imagine that Dave Smart's doing this because he's trying to, whether it's a Division I college job or like you said, he's going to try to coach the Egyptian team or whatever it was. I'm curious to see where he goes from here, but it'll be fun to have him in college, in American college basketball. I'm sorry, he's been in college basketball for a while, but in our version of college basketball.
He's a very animated sideline guy. So if you're watching some games of Texas Tech, watch
awesome.
for him. Lot of hands. Like it's the same dress shirt and tie every game. It's the same suit. And
especially on defense, like a lot of like waving an arm. You know, like does he get in a stance on defense? Like as he's on the sideline?
he like his back is probably just mangled because like he's low to the floor and really just he feels like he's the sixth man out there half the time.
He's a Shaka Smart type, slapping the floor. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. All right. Do you have anything to plug, Jordan? Plug something.
Nothing major to plug. What I would plug for you, your Dinos, big couple of games coming up in Greece this summer. They play Yale and they play Wichita State. So
let's go. Two fraud programs, if we're being honest. The Dinos will make quick work of those guys. And this is an exciting time to be a Calgary Dinos fan with Dave Smart leaving Carleton. Because you could say all you want that the new coach is good, but it really does feel like a Coach K at Duke situation that like now the door is open. Now he's actually gone, and he was actually coaching this whole time. And now that he's gone, my beloved Dinos are going to take advantage. You're the best, Jordan. Thanks for making time, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, buddy.
All right, thank you to Jordan for coming on the show. Thank you to my dad. I don't know. The show was a one for me type show, TJ. You know what I mean? Like, you know how they say about like Hollywood directors where they do the one for the studio and then one for themselves. This is the one for me. I had Brandon on last week. That was for the studio. I didn't want to do that, but I felt the higher ups were asking me to do it. So I wanted to do a show where I could have some fun, and I love having my dad on the show. It is so fun. It is so fun. So, thank you to Jordan though joining us as well. I gotta use Jordan as a resource more often because these Canadians are becoming a problem in American basketball. They are just everywhere. Zach Edey is wreaking havoc on college basketball right now, and we need to utilize Jordan more. So, anyway, thank you to both those guys. Moving on, shout outs, TJ.
Yeah.
UFOs? I mean, is that
Alien.
the shout out?
So, here's my opinion on this. The guy that everyone's freaking out on the internet today because there was a congressional hearing under oath where it was revealed that there's alien evidence and people have been attacked by these aliens or injured by them and that we have bodies. It's the same guy that said it like a month ago that's saying it under oath now. So I don't know why everybody's freaking out.
I guess the implication is that now he's under oath, so like now there's more weight to it because if he's lying, his life is ruined. Whereas like we could just point and laugh at him before if he was lying and just call him crazy. So I guess like people think it's more legitimate now because if you're gonna do because as we know, nobody's ever lied under oath. It's never happened in the history of the judicial system and Congress and everything else. So for this guy to go under oath and say these things. But what's weird to me is, isn't he just like, it's not direct eyewitness testimony. It's like, I heard this. And I
also like, what's the risk factor of him saying this under oath? They can't prove that he's not telling the truth.
Yeah, right.
They can't prove that aliens don't exist. They can't explore
Dude, this is genius. What if that's what it is? Is that by saying this, now the only way to prove that he's lying is to
explore every inch of every piece of the universe and be like, Congress, I guess he was lying.
Get off your ass and start financing NASA a little more and let's go fuck up some aliens, you know? Like, let's get out there. Like, what are we doing? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe this is like a...
The other side of the internet on this is just saying that this is this and the Barbie movie and the Twitter change are just distraction techniques to get the eye off of the real issues in society.
Yeah, I said this the last time we talked about aliens. It's become very confusing to me because the guys who believed in the aliens used to be the conspiracy guys. And now if you're someone who watched this congressional hearing and you're like, damn, sounds like aliens exist, you're actually now like a sheep. And you're now like you're the guy who's got their third eye open if you're the one that's saying like, no, you're all being lied to. There are actually no aliens. And I can't keep up with like what I'm supposed to believe at this point.
The aliens are no longer the real story. They're now the distraction story.
What I think's going on here, though, is 1969 is the last time Purdue played for a national championship. They made the Final Four in 1980. They made the national championship in 1969. And then that summer, we landed on the moon, TJ. Neil Armstrong, a Purdue alum, landed on the moon. What I think is going on here, as we're entering a season where Purdue will make the Final Four, as I told my dad, breaking news, Purdue will make the Final Four this year. I will will it into existence. I don't want it to happen, but it's going to happen because my mother deserves it. I think the aliens are waiting for Purdue to make the national championship or the Final Four again. Then they're going to attack us for revenge on Neil Armstrong. Because Neil Armstrong is basically, if you think about it, he's basically like the first space colonizer. And he's like Christopher Columbus bringing smallpox to the aliens. And I think the aliens have been biding their time this whole time. They've been waiting because and they got a little sloppy with the, they accidentally, like one ship accidentally crashed and we took a couple of them hostage. But the ultimate plan for them is they're going to come fuck shit up when Purdue is about to win a national championship. So that way Purdue can never win a national championship because they're bitter about Neil Armstrong being a colonizer. Your thoughts?
I would love to see the look on your dad's face when the aliens land during the middle of a Purdue game.
Yeah! My dad's like fist pumping. Yeah, I'm team A.
Go aliens.
Can you imagine the UFO just like descending on the stadium as they're about to tip off the national championship game? And my dad's losing his mind. And I'm looking at him like, Dad, they're going to kill us. They're going to enslave and kill us all. He's like, doesn't matter. Purdue's not winning a banner.
Jim Nantz would be so pissed that he was retired.
Yeah. Other shout-outs. Gonzaga, San Diego State announced a home and home. Fun time to be a college basketball fan. All these great programs doing home and homes with each other. Real home and homes, I should say. Not the Kentucky Gonzaga deal. Gonzaga, I think, is playing at Kentucky this year. They're playing at Rupp. But when Cal does a home and home, it's always like got caveats. It's always like whatever. So it's very refreshing, TJ, to see Carolina and Kansas announce, bam, one game will be in Allen Fieldhouse, one game will be in the Dean Dome. Bam, Gonzaga, SDSU, one game is going to be on Gonzaga's home floor, one game is going to be on San Diego State's home floor. It's exciting and it's fun, and the state of West Coast basketball is such that Gonzaga and San Diego State might be the two best programs on the West Coast right now. Apologies to Arizona fans, but people forget you did lose to a 15 seed. That's one of the great, how happy are Arizona fans that Purdue lost to Fairleigh Dickinson? Nobody remembers that Arizona lost to Princeton.
Virginia fans as well.
Yeah, Virginia fans as well. But like Arizona, we're entering a season where Tommy Lloyd has been like a darling of college basketball. I love Tommy Lloyd, so I'm not trying to like say it shouldn't be this way, but like Tommy Lloyd is a great interview, very affable. His teams are so good, so fun to watch. They're going to be fun this year. But the man's kind of had a couple. He kind of underachieved in his first tournament, and then last year he lost to a 15 seed, and it's getting swept under the rug because of Matt Painter, which is Tommy Lloyd's very, very happy about that. Anyway, sorry to bring Arizona to this. Arizona fans are like, what the fuck did we do? Talk about Gonzaga and San Diego State. Why would you bring this up? But that's exciting, fun home and home, and that's great for college basketball. So shout out to them. What else? Jim Harbaugh says here suspended for 4 games for violations and lying and covering all this. I can't talk about that. So Michigan has beat Ohio State in football the last 2 years, and as a Buckeye, like I'm in a position, TJ, where I just feel like I can't touch this because I'll just look like a bitter hater, And I just have to tip my cap and say that Michigan has the upper hand in the rivalry right now, and for me to pretend like, if I was to say like that there's institutional rot at Michigan and that people also forget that the basketball coach at Michigan struck a man, and that the idea of like a Michigan man, the mythical Michigan man is dead and gone forever because, I never want to hear any Michigan person talk about how we like have better citizens and whatever the bullshit that they're feeding themselves. All of that is gone now because of Jim Harbaugh and Juwan Howard. So like you've officially lost the high ground. I can't say any of that. I'm not going to say any of that because they beat us 2 years in a row now, TJ. So I have to just tip my cap and be like, listen, whether you're cheating, whether you're not, I'm more focused on the Buckeyes. I'm looking inward, and I want Ohio State to care less about what's going on with you guys and figure out a way to not run 7,000 wide receiver screens in a game where none of them are working.
It's a shame, too, because Michigan misses just 4 absolutely intensely difficult games on their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
ECU, UNLV, Bowling Green, and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, all in Ann Arbor, all 4 in Ann Arbor.
Are the stars aligning for the Rutgers upset?
I put this out there. In 2021, we beat them outright in the second half of the game. In 2022, we beat them outright in the first half of the game. This year, those 2 halves come together. That's one entire win in my book.
That is. Yeah, that checks out.
Plus, we named a starting quarterback before the first snap of the season for the first time in like 5 years. So, this is our year.
I'm excited. I'm so excited for college football. I found Big Cat has taught me that you can just I need to start doing that more with content or social media, I should say. Stuff is an easy cheat code is just say like I'm excited for football. Just tweet like if you're just like a 41 days till football guy, 40 days till football guy, people eat that shit up. So I just want to officially say I don't know, we can clip this. I'm excited for football. There, just clip that part. Put that out. See, that doesn't do numbers. I hate my audience.
Hot take.
Kidding, of course, I'm kidding. What? Oh, last thing, Cody. Do you have a birthday? Cody.
Yeah.
Can we get? We can hear you. Yeah. Can you pop up on the screen? Or are you not on the? Is that? Yeah. There he is.
I'm here.
You had your birthday between last show and when was your birthday?
It was yesterday. 25.
Happy birthday, dude. I didn't know that. I didn't realize.
Thanks,
You mentioned that your birthday was coming up, but then
it was more shadowed by me getting destroyed by Big Cat. So yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted to shout you out and say happy birthday, and also let you know that I got you a birthday present, and it is this.
No.
I think I'm gonna buy 2 tickets to the Bills Bears game, and ask Big Cat to come with me.
Yeah.
And then give you the other ticket, and when he shows up, he's sitting next to you.
That'd be legendary. If you could convince him to go, that would be.
I don't think we're convinced. I don't think but I might try to. Yeah, it is true. It's going to be hard. Like that was very big-headed of me to assume that I could be the one to convince Dan to go to a.
I mean, if anyone could,
game.
it might be you.
Yeah, I just feel like I have a better chance than you do because I am.
Just shoot him a DM. He's probably free.
Shoot him a DM. Yeah, that'll be my birthday present to you. If I can convince him to go, I'm going to pull the okey doke, and I'm going to give you the other ticket and not tell him until he shows up and it's too late and he has to sit by you. How do you think he would handle that? You would just turn around and leave?
I think he would like it. He likes preseason football, I think, so it should be all good there.
Anybody else have shout-outs?
I was going to just shout out both Dave and Buster. Put up an absolute clinic in the arcade yesterday.
Oh, you at the arcade? I saw that.
I'm well respected as one of the best arcade/carnival players around.
I got to see this firsthand. I got to get in there and see you working.
I'll show you a trick or two. I played games for 75 minutes, hit 3 jackpots, 4,000 tickets, walked out happy. So I have my parents' basement is just filled to the ceiling with gigantic stuffed animals that I used to come home from like Dorney Park or Six Flags from, because I wouldn't ride roller coasters. I'd just go play the carnival games and just come home with the most obnoxious stuffed animals possible. It's my true calling in life is games.
You are going to love the Midwest. You are going to love the state fairs in the Midwest, the small town carnivals. This is going to be so fun. We got to do a series on this somehow. We got to bounce around to. That's awesome. Well, good on you, winning all the. Is that your last trip? Or are you going back again? Was that the farewell?
D&B's?
To your local Dave & Buster's. To that local one.
I mean, there's a UFC card on Saturday. I might end up there this weekend. Who knows? You never know when a D&B trip might strike. It could happen at any time.
Could happen at any time. All right. Thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you for watching. These shows have been more fun, man. I will say, like, since we've gotten to Chicago, it's been a lot more fun. And I'm still waiting for you two bozos to arrive, and we'll really get this party rolling. So we're having some fun here. I hope everyone's enjoying the show. We'll keep it rolling. We will see you next week on Tuesday. Thank you again to Jordan Henry and my father. Goodbye, everybody.